The Bible is an idol. Now today we want to have what they call a scenario. And listen to me as I teach you these truths about the Holy Ghost. Let the Holy Ghost teach you about history. He can teach you all things. They'll lie to you. These religious people will lie to you. If you'll read in the 18th chapter of the book of Acts and the 2nd verse, the Catholic Church said Peter was the Pope of the first church. He was the first Pope. And it tells you right there in the 2nd verse, it's talking about Aquila and Priscilla. They had left Rome because the emperor, Claudius Caesar, had commanded all Jews to leave Rome. Now, how could Peter have been in Rome? Peter was an escaped convict. The angel got him out of jail. They was looking for him to cut his head off. So they'll lie to you in history to make their scenario be theirs, and they prove things by history, which is not a fact. So take the Holy Ghost and let him teach you about history. Now let me give you a scenario. Say you're a young woman or a young man, a lady or a gentleman, and you feel an urge to have God. Say you live back around Aquila and Priscilla's time when Paul was preaching. Well, a preacher would have come through, whether it's Apollos or Peter or Paul or Aquila and Priscilla or Apollos, whoever it was. And they would tell you about Jesus. And they would put you in a little community, and you'd live there in that community all your life, and all you would have, you may have one letter from an apostle or something, but you'd live there all your life being led by the Holy Ghost. Now listen to me, I'm going to show you a truth that don't change. Some things change it. See, if the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law, then they're a law unto themselves. So listen to what I'm telling you about the past. Now, like in the 15th chapter of the book of Acts, the Jews was preaching that you must be circumcised and keep the law before you can be saved. Well, the apostles all got together there. And it was James and John and Peter and Paul and some of the elders, Barnabas and them. And they wrote a letter, said, you do not have to keep the law and you do not have to be circumcised. Now, that's what they told them. And it said it seemed good to the Holy Ghost. Now, notice these things. Put the Holy Ghost in it and you'll get the correct truth. God can take me back like he did Ezekiel. He said, Ezekiel, son of man, said, can these bones live again? He took him out in the valley of dry bone, and he was showing him he can make Israel live again. So let God teach you these things. Now, as times progressed, notice what happened. You had the Gnostics. They kind of run him off in the wilderness. Gnostic means knowledge. They believed God lived in them, and they were right. And so notice how history formed up. Pretty soon, Constantine was chosen by the devil to set up the church in 330. They had the Nicene Council. Well, they got up some scrolls. You see, people think they had the Bible back in them days. They didn't have the Bible. They had scrolls. You ever see a scroll of Isaiah? Woo, that's great big. Constantine put it on vellum, and that's calf skin. See, when you write on a skin like that, Paul would tell Timothy, bring the parchment. See, that's animal skins. It was great big. You couldn't haul it in a truck. But Constantine understood he was the only one that had power to go throughout all of Europe and gather up all the old history of the Jews and the history of Jesus and all the church, because the people was turning to the gospel in them days. And so he had to control them. Well, they got up 50 Bibles. Now, notice what happened. The sun god worshiper got this up. What for? To control the people with. Now, in the beginning, it wasn't so. Like they said, Moses commanded to give them a divorcement if a husband and wife couldn't get on. Jesus said, in the beginning, it wasn't so. It wasn't that way. God intended for them to be one. Okay. Now, in the beginning, God said, I'm going to pour out my spirit. I'm going to write my laws in your hand. Notice how it changed when Constantine come on. Then the Catholic Church had the scriptures. All right. Anybody that didn't keep what they wrote up at the Nicene Council could become a heretic. And they'd burn you at the stake, boil you in oil, stone you to death, cut your head off, whatever. See, they took Paul to Rome and cut his head off according to history. Okay. Now follow this trail of thinking. Like when Charlemagne come in, he couldn't even read. Most of the people in them days couldn't read. They didn't have big schools like we got, didn't have telephones, didn't have electricity. Everybody lived off the land. Remember what I'm telling you. Everybody lived off the land because they had to eat. You had to grow your food. It wasn't like it is today. Everything's changed. Okay, as you go on through history, then the Protestants, they like Wycliffe and they like Tyndale, and they like Martin Luther. Well, you know what they got them? The Bible. They stole it off the Catholic because it gave the Catholics power. The head was wounded. The Catholic head was wounded. But when King James authorized the Bible, it healed that wound. All of them got under the Bible then. And so this was what happened in the past. Now, you can't see these truths if you look through the eyes of history of a Bible worshiper or something. You got to see them. But now say today, a young man or a young woman wants God. They don't get to live out on the farm. They're put under a system today that's got numbers. You got atomic energy. I want to show you something. If you'll study history, everybody lived on this level. Draw a line, just a line on this level. And everybody sort of was the same. Everybody was farmers, everybody sheep herders or fishermen. They lived off the land. Everybody did. Basically, they had some merchants, but they had to live off the farm. And watch that line. When it comes over to the last part of 1700, getting close to 1800, what happened? They invented a steam engine. And this started the Industrial Revolution. When that started the industrial, what's that line go up? The Rockefellers got rich, the Rothschilds got rich, and the Kennedys and everybody got rich. They had zoot suit people riding around in train. They built tracks and it went all the way across America. And this is when the Industrial Revolution started. Now, people couldn't even read good back then, but they had Bibles. Who would have ever believed all them scrolls, you couldn't get them in a truck, but come in one little bitty book? And Jesus taught about it in the book of Revelation, chapter 10. You eat this book, you're going to be bitter. So now this young lady and young man will get in a church, maybe a Baptist church. They'll be there 40 years and never know the truth about what happened in the beginning. In the beginning was controlled by the Holy Ghost. God wrote His laws in our hearts, poured out His Spirit. Now all these things changed. The devil fixed the world till he's got it under his power. But God never did change. He never did change. We're still to be led by the Spirit. But now there's no place on earth for spiritual people. We're like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I mean, we're kicked out. There's no place. You can join a Baptist church, a Catholic church, a Pentecostal church, a Mormon church, or a Jehovah's Witness, or even a snake handler's church. You get anything today. They get all that junk because they confuse you. They do not want the truth to be made known. But God can catch me away in these visions and show me what really happened. And He can do you the same way. So learn these truths about the Holy Ghost. It's the same today. God never did change. We're to be led by the Spirit. I know we have to stay low, and there's only a few of them. But we have to obey God by the Spirit. You don't obey God by them books. They made them books up to control you. See, Queen James, they don't even care that he's a Queen James. Watch my video, Holy Perdition. And even the people, the LGBT community put out a Bible, and they said he's one of them. And that's the truth. People don't even care anymore. And so today everything is fixed for the flesh. There's no place for me to go. I'm a Holy Ghost person. So watch history and how it changed and how Satan built the world and how he's got his angels operating today in the world. And learn a lesson from the Holy Ghost about what time has done to the flesh. But it ain't done nothing to the Spirit. God never changes. Jesus is the same today as He was yesterday and will be forever. He leads us by the Spirit, by the Holy Ghost. And you must have this truth and you must be able to see clearly. I'm going to keep teaching you Holy Ghost things till some of you finally say, I see that. I got it. And I want you to be with Jesus forever. So don't let this world take you away from Jesus. See you next time.
Memories about the sons of God. Stories of how the saints were tested. Today the sons of God again are manifested. When the sons of God live again. When the Spirit sets His children free. When the sons of God live again. They will reign with Christ throughout eternity. vain will walk upon the land.